Mm. Uh, huh. Oh my god.
Today's video is brought to you by craftcomputing.store, the letters I, P, and A, and viewers like you. Or at least it could be. If you like the things we do here on Craft Computing, consider joining the Patreon. Every contribution helps keep power onto my lights, server rack, and my beer fridge. Seriously, I would not be able to do the things that I do without the amazing support from my patrons. As little as $1 a month gets you exclusive access to my Discord server, which my amazing patrons from all over the world keep lively at all hours of the day. You can chat with me or the other hosts from our weekly live show, Talking Heads, or simply lurk and catch the ebb and flow of the craft computing community. Visit patreon.com/craftcomputing to sign up today. That's patreon.com/craftcomputing. And again, thanks for watching. Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. Are budget PC builds dead? Specifically, can you still build a PC with a used Xeon? That's the question we're going to try to answer today. If you've been paying attention to flagship CPUs over the last 4 years or so, you'll notice that not only has performance doubled, but price has also skyrocketed to match. Now, we've been seeing an arms race between AMD and Intel, the likes of which that has not been seen since the turn of the century. That one hurts a little bit, doesn't it? And if you've been paying attention to benchmarks versus modern CPUs, the Xeon is wholly obsolete, at least on paper. But does that mean it's not still a valid option? Let's find out. On the table in front of me are two examples of what you might consider a budget build today. One of them is a Chinese X99 motherboard with a V4 Xeon CPU. The other is a Zen 2-based Ryzen 7 3700X on an AMD A550 motherboard. We're going to be comparing these two platforms as apples to apples as possible based on a set budget. We're going to be using the same graphics card, the same storage, and the same amount of money spent on RAM. Now notice I didn't say the same capacity or the same speed because, well, they are still different platforms. Now, in the past on this channel, I have done entire builds around these Xeon platforms when I've gone to review them. But I figured in the sake of time and efficiency this time around, I'm just going to throw these onto a test bench. And luckily, Open Bench Table sent me out one of their brand new BC1 modular test benches. So I think we're going to start out the video by putting this one together. Welcome back. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Open Bench Table. I do want to thank them for sending it out, though. But this is a pretty nice little self-contained unit. It's much more portable and has a much smaller footprint than some of the other test benches that I've used in the past, and has mounts for just about everything you could need. We've got a mount for the power supply down here. I've even got a 2.5-inch drive mounted to the bottom of the motherboard tray. Everything's routed neatly, and I like it. Link down in the description. So with that out of the way, what are our test platforms for today? Representing the used Xeon is a Machinist X99 motherboard rocking a Xeon E5 2667 V4. This is an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU with a base clock of only 3.2 GHz and an all-core turbo of 3.5. This is one of the fastest single-threaded Xeons in the V4 lineup using Intel's 14nm process, and should give us a pretty good baseline for where CPUs of this generation should stack up against modern competitors. Best of all, this CPU can be had for only $42 on eBay right now. And the 2667 gives some pretty good symmetry to this channel, as the 2667 V0 was the very first CPU I ever reviewed on this channel. For our memory, I've got 4 8GB sticks of DDR4 ECC registered memory running at 2666, and you can pick these up for about $20 a stick, or about $80 for all 32 gigs. And for the cooler today, I decided to test this UpHere S5C, which is a single tower 120mm cooler with 5 heat pipes inside of it, and it was only $30 to boot. Representing our modern CPU platform is this slightly outdated, yet still very relevant AMD Ryzen 7 3700X. This is also an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU, but it's based on AMD's 7nm Zen 2 architecture. It has a base clock of 3.6 GHz and a max turbo of 4.4 GHz through Precision Boost Overdrive. We've also got it paired with 16 GB of Guile 3200 MHz DDR4 memory. And for the cooler, again, we're going with an inexpensive option to keep our budget as low as possible on both platforms. In this case, we have a ID Cooling SE214XT. I'll annotate if I didn't get that correct. I'm doing that from memory. But again, it is a 120mm tower cooler with 4 heat pipes and a single fan. All told, this package will run you about $333 as shown versus just $241 for the Xeon. That's a difference of about $90. Now, when we're talking about pricing, that's for the platform itself. That is the motherboard, CPU, memory, and the cooler used on each of these packages. We will also be sharing some additional components, again, to keep testing as equal as possible. For the graphics card, we have a Founders Edition GTX 1080, and for the storage, we're using a Patriot 240GB NVMe drive, as well as a Silicon Power 1TB SATA drive for all of our games and benchmarks. With that all out of the way, let's go ahead and get into testing so I can save my voice, because I have a cold right now. See you in a few. After 2 full days of testing, the results are finally in. And what's more, I decided to throw a curveball in at the last minute by adding in a second Xeon to compare against. So we'll have the $43 Xeon E5 2667 V4 8-core CPU, the $130 Ryzen 7 3700X 8-core CPU, and a Xeon E5 2697A V4. A 16-core chip with a boost clock of 3.1 GHz that runs around $105 today on eBay. More expensive than the 2667, sure, but still cheaper than the Ryzen, and with twice as many cores. So are used Xeon CPUs still the king of budget workstation and gaming rigs? Or should we leave them in the e-waste bins from whence they came? Let's find out. Starting with some synthetic testing for baselines, it's not hard to see the improvements made to modern CPUs over the last 5 years. Cinebench R15 shows the Xeon CPUs keeping pace with single-threaded scores from 1st-gen Ryzen CPUs, along with 8th-gen Intel chips with similar frequencies, like the 1700X or the i3-8100. The 2667 V4 scored a 155, and the 2697A came in with a 152. Multi-threaded was a similar story, with the 2667 coming in just shy of the Ryzen 7 1700X at 1477. The results aren't quite so rosy for the 2697A with a 2502, coming in just 200 points shy of a pair of 8-core E5 2690 Sandy Bridge chips. Of course, the Ryzen 7 3700X made short work of both benchmarks, scoring a 206 in single-threaded and a 2121 in multi-threaded testing. That's a full 35% faster than the 2667 V4 in single-core and nearly a 50% improvement in multi-threaded workloads. Surely, this is going to equate to massive losses for the Xeons when we move into gaming, right? Well, here's where the story gets a little interesting, and why context in benchmark testing and results are so important. I have a ton of respect for outlets that do benchmark testing designed to eliminate all variables and potential bottlenecks, and provide comprehensive top-to-bottom performance results based upon that goal. But in that style of testing, every test result is just going to be a comparison of how much faster the 13900K and 4090 are than everything else. When you add in budget limitations to the mix, and you limit your testing to PC parts that would actually be paired together, you end up with results that look much different than they do in the global leaderboards. No one's going to pair a 13900K with a GTX 1080. No one's going to buy an RTX 4090 and stick it into a Machinist X99 motherboard powered by a 7-year-old 8-core Xeon. In my opinion, eliminating bottlenecks in this particular test would be invalid in the real world, because this is a sub-$600 scenario, and the results might get a little cloudy. And that's exactly what we see here today. So, to Steve, sit back, relax, grab a drink, and let's get to it. Testing DirectX 11 with 3D Mark Firestrike, the results are pretty unsurprising, with the Ryzen 3700X notching easy victories over both Xeon CPUs. But they're not the 35 and 50% wins that we see in Cinebench, and there are a couple interesting things to look at, like the 2697A outscoring the 3700X when it comes to graphic testing in both Firestrike and Firestrike Extreme. The 3700X did manage to win both combined and overall scores, but again, it was far closer than any of you likely expected. We see a similar story in DirectX 12-based Time Spy, where again the 3700X wins over the 2667 V4, but only by 3 and 4%, so it wasn't exactly a dominating performance here. The funny thing here is that the 2697A manages to pull out the overall victory in Time Spy Extreme, outscoring the Ryzen chip in all 3 tests. Before we move into gaming, it's worth noting just how well all 3 CPUs performed when it comes to boost frequencies and cooling, given the budget coolers that we used here. The 3700X was the hottest out of all the chips, running at 65 degrees Celsius at peak, but it also managed to hit 4.4 GHz in single-threaded situations and held 4.1 GHz clock speeds during extended Cinebench runs. The 2667 V4 peaked at just 52 degrees Celsius and ran at 3.5 GHz through basically every single scenario I threw at it. The real surprise is in the 2697A V4, which hit a max temperature of just 44 degrees Celsius on its hottest core, likely due to each of its cores running at lower clock speeds. 3.2 gigahertz was the fastest clock speed ever observed, and during gaming and multi-threaded loads, it hovered between 2.9 and 3.1 gigahertz. Still not a terrible result when you consider it has the same TDP as the 2667 V4, but double the number of cores. And finally, let's get on to the main event, the gaming benchmarks, where we're going to start weird and get even weirder as we go along. And just as a footnote, I was completely sober while running these tests. Each test was performed 3 times per resolution, then averaged to give the numbers shown here, as is my standard procedure. Any unexpected results were then revalidated with further testing, and I stand by all of these 100%. Buckle up. Starting with Hitman 3, we see nearly identical results across all 3 CPUs at both 1080p and 1440p resolutions. 1080p high settings gave us an average of 136 FPS for both Xeon CPUs and 140 FPS for the Ryzen 7. But remember, that's only a difference of 2.4%, and it was actually the Xeon CPUs pulling off the minor victory at 1440p, with an average of 93 FPS versus just 90. The 0.1% lows were nearly 6 FPS higher, a difference of around 10%. My theory is actually in RAM speed differences between these 2 platforms. While the 3700X is running DDR4 3200, Ryzen only supports dual-channel memory. The quad-channel DDR4 2400 memory on the X99 platform provides much more memory bandwidth and lower latency, which could have an impact on texture and object load times in the game. But again, that is only a theory. Cyberpunk 2077 is an insanely demanding game, with even some modern GPUs bending the knee when it comes to rendering Night City. But as of version 1.6, AMD's FSR2 is fully integrated and supported in the game. Given the GTX 1080 struggled to hit 40 FPS with FSR disabled, I opted to run this test with FSR in performance mode to show that even a budget system can wind up with more than acceptable performance in this game. Again, the results here are so close, it's difficult to call an all-out winner. While the Xeon CPUs managed 97 FPS averages, a whole 3 FPS faster than the 3700. Ryzen 1% lows, the same story in 40p with nearly identical results. Looking at the numbers, it'd be pretty easy to declare the Xeon the outright winner, but I have a hard time doing that when the difference is less than 5%. In the case of 97.2 FPS versus 94.3, that's a frame time of just 0.32 milliseconds. If you can, as a gamer, even on a monitor with a 1 millisecond response time, tell me that there is a quantitative difference between those results, I'd be happy to explain to you that you're not, in fact, superhuman, and that an extra 1 frame drawn out of every 30 isn't going to give you a better game experience. I'm declaring both games a tie. Comment down below if you disagree, and I'll be happy to tell you that you're wrong. Project Cars 3 does start to show some actual performance differences at 1080p like we expected, where the GPU is finally hitting a CPU speed cap. The 3700X manages 111 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 71. The 2667 V4 managed just 95 FPS, with the 2697A trailing at 90 FPS thanks to its lower clock speeds. At 1440p, though, we're back to nearly identical results, and in fact, they're identical with the 1080p result, 95 FPS, with the 3700 1080p proves still the great equalizer when it comes to the GTX 1080. Doom Eternal throws us right back into chaos, with the 2667 V4 scoring an outright victory at 1080p, with a 6 FPS lead over the 3700X and nearly 12 FPS in low frame times. We also see the 2697A start to struggle to keep up with the other chips, as it had 0.1% lows nearly 20 FPS behind, or a difference of around 31%. At 1440p, performance once again rounds us out, with less than 2% differences between the 2667 and the 3700X in all 3 metrics. And now, we start to crack our knuckles and scratch our heads thanks to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, where it's not the 3700X or the 2667 taking the performance crown, it's the 16-core 2697A V4 pulling out the victory. At 1080p, all 3 chips averaged around 79 FPS, with only the 2697A and 3700X keeping 1% lows above 50. 1440p brings our averages back down into the mid-50s and basically normalizes all of the low frame times. Yet again, I'm going to call this one a tie. Rocket League is the one game in this benchmark suite that I ran at esports style quality, opting for performance settings in favor of eye candy. The results at 1080p were again practically identical to one another, with results clocking within 2% of each other in both averages and low frame times. And while 1440p did bring our averages down, it's not nearly the impact you might have expected, dropping our average frame rates by only 10%, despite driving 75% more pixels at the higher resolution. It also goes to show just how much performance you can get out of a budget system like this if you're willing to turn down some of the graphics settings. Cyberpunk 2077 at 75 FPS and Rocket League at 305 were probably not on your 1440p bingo cards for this video, but here we are. And finally, the one game that scales in any way, shape, or form to the expected results is Counter-Strike Go. Here, the 3700X notches its only knockout win of the day, winning decisively in all three metrics across both resolutions. Now, it's not the 50 or even 35% advantage that Cinebench might lead you to expect, at least when it comes to the average frame rate. At 1440p, the 3700X outpaced the 2667 V4 by 15%, 336 to 293. Low frame rates were even more extreme, being a full 35 and 43% faster. If you are a budget-conscious gamer who watches a ton of Hardware Unboxed or Gamers Nexus, you've no doubt seen how far down the performance charts CPUs and GPUs from just a couple of years are landing these days. The fact that an RTX 4080 is 3 times faster than a GTX 1080 is not a surprise, especially given the 4080's outrageous price tag of $1,200. But is $1,200 what it actually takes to play games in today's market? Pricing out all three configurations that I tested today easily lands you under $600 for each of these systems, without a case included. The Ryzen 7 3700X based build would cost you $591 as configured, with the GTX 1080, a 240GB NVMe drive, 1TB SATA SSD, motherboard, cooler, memory, and the CPU. We're looking at $499 exactly for the E5 2667 V4 and $561 for the same setup with the 2697A V4. Given the performance differences in some games, I'd say the 16-core Xeon is not worth it in a gaming PC and will actually bring your performance down in single-thread dependent titles like CSGO. But either of these Xeon CPUs remain excellent values for either home labs or servers. The Ryzen 7 3700X PC would run you around $90 more expensive than the 2667 V4 platform. For that price, you're also only getting half the memory at 16 gigabytes instead of 32, and only getting around 2/3 the overall memory bandwidth at 51.2 gigabytes per second versus 76.8 gigabytes per second on the Xeon system. Single-threaded performance is a massive leap forward from the Xeons, beating both CPUs easily by more than 30%. But those gains only matter in specific situations, and most games in this budget range are going to have other limits that prevent the Ryzen from reaching its full potential. When compared to modern gaming PCs running Intel 13900Ks, RTX 4080s, or even just more modern components in the budget range, yes, performance benchmarks are going to leave any of these systems in the dust. But does that mean CPUs like the 2667 V4 are completely useless for gaming? Based on the gaming benchmarks here, unless you have more money than sense or are a professional esports competitor, it's hard to see any advantage of building a modern PC system in today's market. Sure, the 13900K absolutely destroys the 2667 in benchmarks, more than doubling the per-core performance and scoring 4 times higher in multi-threaded. But that's also a comparison of CPUs that cost $650 versus just $43. If you put that in terms of single-threaded Cinebench points per dollar, that's 28 cents per point on the 2667 V4 and $2.06 per point for the 13900K. To put this another way, only one game in my testing at 1440p failed to average more than 75 FPS on the Xeon CPU, and that was Tiny Tina's Wonderland, a game that, like Cyberpunk 2077, has AMD's FSR2 implemented natively, which would result in much better frame rates when enabled. In fact, Tiny Tina was the only game to have 0.1%.
So it says there's 2 people in here. You gonna talk to me? Hello. So it says there's one person in here. You gonna talk with me? Oh my god. Huh. Huh. Oh my god. I wonder. Huh. Okay. Huh. That's kind of weird. 936 points, huh? Wow. Wow. That is bad. Huh. That's funny shit. Hello. You gonna talk to me? Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
quality setup possible, buying into every single claim, frame, and mind game that PC hardware manufacturers pitch. And we're going to see how much of an edge we really get compared to the average PC, which, parts are actually worth splurging on and which are a total waste of money, Let's talk hardware. Naturally, we got to start with the best. The beastly Intel Core i9-13900K and the behemoth Asus ROG Strix 4090, because frames win games. We've proven it, and these two pretty much always get the most frames. To manage all that power and heat, we've gone with the Fractal Torrent, equipped with a 420mm, nice, AIO from Corsair, 7 140mm Noctua industrial fans, and 3 NFF12s at the bottom of the case for fresh air to our GPU, which we then exhaust through the front-mounted radiator where we've removed the dust filters entirely for better airflow. Finally, we swapped out the stock retention bracket for a thermal grizzly bracket to give us a few more degrees of cooling on the CPU. And up in the attic lives our power supply from Seasonic, who sponsored this video. We chose their PX1300 because it's 80 plus platinum certified, and so even at 20% load, this thing will be, at worst, 90% efficient. And all their new PSUs in the PX lineup come with a 12-volt high power connector, so you don't need this stupid octopus adapter when you put in the 4090. For the motherboard, we are using the EVGA Z790 Dark Kingpin. Motherboard specifically meant for extreme overclockers. Notice that the RAM has been moved up to the top of the board. This is specifically to reduce the distance from the CPU to improve the timings. We've used the onboard utility to overclock our CPU to 5.8 gigahertz across all cores for that extra oomph, And of course, we have ample fast storage in the form of 10 terabytes worth of PCI Express Gen 4 and NVMe SSDs. Okay, now for peripherals. Our guiding light is latency reduction. Latency is the time between input and eventual output, and is the enemy of good gaming. Every single piece in this setup is focused on reducing the time between targeting the enemy and seeing his head replaced with a thin red mist. The biggest source of latency in your system is likely going to be the display. A typical 144 Hz gaming display introduces a whopping 6.94 milliseconds of latency. Compare that to the 390 Hz of the Acer Nitro X, the fastest monitor on the market today, where each frame is displayed for just 2.56 milliseconds. This nets us a nearly 4.38 millisecond reduction. That is, if you can run your games that fast. In scenarios where performance is CPU limited, like we are, preventing us from running all of our games at 390 frames per second, you might want to consider the Asus ROG Swift PG27AQN, which is 1440p and 360 Hz, meaning you can trade 30 Hz for extra image clarity. We have both here, but to reduce GPU overhead, we'll be unplugging our second monitor while gaming. And for peripherals, the Azaun Koenig M2K. Okay, this is the M1K, but they were all out of M2Ks, and this uses the same sensor and switches, so for our purposes, it works. At just 24 grams, you are basically holding nothing. This map
Hello? You gonna talk with me? Guess not. Fucking bullshit.
Mouse doesn't waste time with side buttons or even most of the mouse. What it does have is 2 clicks and a scroll wheel, or well, the M2K has a scroll wheel, and 8,000 hertz polling rate, which means that your inputs will be delayed at most 0.125 milliseconds, 8 times faster than other piddly gamers' 1,000 hertz polling rates. And if you simply cannot stand the shape, then maybe recommend the more normie Razer Viper 8 kilohertz. While it does come in at nearly 3 times the weight of the Zaun Koenig, it has the same polling rate and sensor, and it is a lot easier to buy. We're using a glass mouse pad for maximum slidage. Feels like you're moving on nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Damn sexy Flanders. Our keyboard is the Wooting 60HE. What makes this so special is that each switch is actually an analog input, meaning we can do things like partially push our keys down to walk rather than run. And we can set our actuation point to 0.1 millimeters. A typical key switch actuates at around 1.5 to 2 millimeters into the keystroke. So that takes about 5 milliseconds more for that key press to register just by the force of the action alone. By setting our actuation point so much higher, our key presses will register 15 to 20 times faster than the competition, just 0.25 milliseconds. The catch is that our keyboard only has 1,000 hertz polling rate, meaning that the average latency will still be 1 millisecond. The only way we could improve this is if the next revision adds 8,000 hertz polling. What makes this actually the best for gaming is that it's an optical instead of a mechanical switch, meaning there's no debounce delay at all. So as soon as you unpress a key, it's instantly unpressed. To ensure that no inputs get lost in the high polling rate fray, we plugged our devices into different USB controllers on our motherboard. You can use your motherboard manual to see which ports are managed by each controller. Oh wait, there is one other input that we forgot to talk about. Our foot pedals. We can't afford to move our fingers away from those WASD keys, so we got Elgato's Stream Deck foot pedals to quickly and easily map some of our less time-critical inputs to. Things like reloading or taunting. The polling rate on this is not nearly as high as we would hope, but we might be able to overclock the thing for a little bit lower latency. That's a whole other can of worms. Finally, we have our audio solution. For the clearest comms, we went with an Electro Voice RE20 with the Dynamite preamp connected to our Audient Evo interface. For the front end, we went with the Sennheiser HD 800S for its incredible soundstage, which allows us to pinpoint the footsteps of our enemies with ease. Oh yeah, and we even got the ultimate gaming router, the Asus ROG Rapture, a quad-band gaming router that has tweaks to optimize network traffic for gaming. Oh, and naturally, we have the Herman Miller Embody gaming chair for maximum ergonomics and comfort. We also made some tweaks. Like we disabled background processes like Windows Defender, which is always a good idea. We've disabled Wi-Fi on the motherboard to reduce EMI and CPU interrupts. We've turned on multi-core enhancement, set Windows to GPU accelerated scheduling and ultimate performance power plan, set XMP on, and we've given our CPU and GPU a slight overclock to get a little bit of extra performance. We aren't pushing too hard as stability is paramount for the sweaty tryhard gamer. Okay, enough theory crafting. Let's see if all of this is worth it by testing it with real gamers.
And by gamers, we mean Linus.
Sup?
No, wrong one.
Oh,
Get out of here. We're going to compare our two setups. This is the most average gaming PC. We've made one upgrade, a 144 hertz monitor.
sure.
We're going to compare that to the full tryhard setup.
The
And you're-
sweatiest gaming PC.
Absolutely. Get your bearings here, enjoy it, play a game with the most common peripherals, the typical kind of experience. A desk mat from LTTstore.com.
Is there anyone else on this map? Is there supposed to be people to fight or what?
Get out of here.
There's no bots.
What the hell, Jake? Okay, just press escape. Go start a bot match. Or you can play a real match and see how you do.
I never used to feel like the G502 was heavy. It's kind of heavy by today's standards. I use a G Pro wireless at home, and it's a lot later. Okay. Oh shoot! Wow. Okay. It's probably the heavy mouse. It's probably because of the heavy mouse. No. Oh shoot! No! Come on! Come on! Ah shoot! Oh no! Ah come on! No!
Hold down tab. That's where you are on the leaderboard.
Well, you know what?
See
It's
that?
hard.
See that? He was at the very bottom. It is hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
What if we could upgrade your game?
All right. Let's try the upgrade.
All right. Welcome to the tryhard setup.
999 frames per second. This is the mouse?
Yes. It weighs but 23 grams.
Wow. Okay.
And we have you equipped with the Wooting 60HE.
Whoa! This is like a hair trigger keyboard.
Because it's an optical and analog switch,
Ooh.
you can set the actuation point as high or as low as you want. I've set it to 0.1 millimeters so that the moment you want to make an action, you go. It also
Ooh.
has rapid trigger. So the moment you relieve any pressure from the key, it just stops sending a signal. You don't have to wait for it to cross back over the actuation point again.
That's pretty cool. What does this do here?
That's for your comms, for your team.
That's okay.
And
I
also
can
we
live
equipped
without
you
that.
with the best headphones you could find for soundstage.
Okay. I should definitely try without sound first for apples to apples here. Is this a 390 hertz monitor?
It is. It's the fastest monitor currently on the market.
Okay. Okay, got him. Come on, he's right there! What do you mean I only hit him 3 times?
Okay, here, I have a solution.
No.
Come on, you're getting clammy hammed. You need to use Gamer Goo. Which flavor would you like? And it comes in...
Oh, I'm liking the weight of this mouse. I'm not liking the shape very much, but not gonna lie, kind of actually feeling it. Okay, what's the Gamer Goo? Fine.
So we
Stop
got
sweaty
different
hands.
smells.
I
We
don't
got
care what the smell.
orange, peppermint. We'll put some on your hands so you can improve your grip. It's kind of a shiny mouse.
This is chaos.
Also, we've brought you some Ghost Gamer nootropics.
What? I don't.
So a nootropic, it's brain-enhancing chemicals. These are all legal.
What are you even talking about?
I'm trying to enhance your performance, Linus.
Well, it's not going to do anything instantly.
Well, we should have taken it 15 minutes ago because that's the amount of time it takes for caffeine to kick in. That's the important thing to know about all of these. The actual thing that matters is the caffeine. So you can just dry scoop it right now if you want.
Sure. Whoa!
I'm gonna get him some water. Oh God, he's gonna die.
I'm fine. Very unpleasant. Not recommended. Honestly, there's too much randomness with just people being flipping everywhere in this to... Okay.
Let's go into AimLab.
Just
Just press Steam. It's right there.
No, I won't. Oh my God. How do I even... Oh my God. I don't have a mouse wheel. I don't know how to use a computer without a scroll wheel. How do you actually...
Well, the good news is that the newer version of this mouse does have a scroll wheel, but the company only makes a certain amount every year, and they ran out. They're like two guys.
Okay,
They're working
all right.
really hard.
Okay. All right. I'm probably not going to do very well. Oh yeah. I definitely feel sweatier. I'm a sweatier gamer for sure. Okay. 68% accuracy. So I am above average, barely.
Which means that you'll probably be worse when you're not performance enhanced.
but I should have more caffeine in my system with my heavy-ass mouse here. All right, I got better.
Okay, now I want to go back and try this test over here.
What did I get that time? Oh, wait, I guess
you
it's a different test.
You had 45,000.
Okay,
Let's
all right,
see how you do on
I'm
this
familiar with the test now. Okay, let's try the sweaty setup. 49,297.
That's it. That's an improvement.
Yes! Barely. Probably just me doing the test 3 times would account for that much improvement. But hey, 69% kill total. Nice.
Oh yeah, and just so you know, this computer, this whole setup, it's $11,000. This one is about it's about 600.
So that extra $10,400 probably better invested in some coaching.
Yeah,
or practice.
but that's not the point.
Pay yourself to practice.
But what do you think? What do you think about some of these parts? Do you think that any of these actually make a huge difference? Like
This is a huge difference maker for me.
as a fan?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Scores and tests aside, which are affected by a human element, what is the actual difference in latency between one system and the other?
On this system, the average end-to-end latency, so from click to when you see something happen on your screen, that's 12 milliseconds.
Really?
Yeah, which is a lot faster than the average PC, which is 26 milliseconds.
And yet I still can't really feel the difference between them. We are really at a point of diminishing returns here, aren't we?
Especially when you consider like human reaction speeds and stuff like that is at like around the 180 to 280 millisecond range.
Yeah.
You're talking about less than a tenth of your own human reaction speed.
Right.
But in the event where 2 people across the planet click at the exact same time, this system's going to win out pretty much every time.
Damn it. I haven't gotten all 5 of them a single time. If you like this video, why don't you watch the one we did on the most average gaming PC, since that's really all you need, evidently.
At Target, low price.
Fred Smith here told us the B&H photo helped change his life. Fred, tell us your story.
Hey, real quick, I'm going to start this video by telling you one of my least favorite things about webcams. It's the faked product footage. It kills me how many webcam marketing videos pretend to use footage from the webcam, but really they're using footage from like $5,000 camera rigs like this. It's almost all of them. I called out Logitech on this with their StreamCam back in 2020. Big problem I have, and I actually emailed them about this, is this picture right here that shows someone sitting in a living room with a very fancy shallow depth of field behind them. And then they did it even worse with their recent Brio 500 launch. AverMedia even did it, which bums me out the most because AverMedia makes great webcams. They don't need to do that. And so while I don't want to give points to Elgato for not doing this, like you don't get points for not being scummy, it's worth noting that I've never seen a company share as much webcam footage in their webcam marketing as Elgato, which makes sense because they don't have to. This webcam is bonkers. Like I'm using it right now. This is the webcam, and I'm going to shoot this entire video on this webcam because this webcam is unreal. Let me tell you about it. So here's the deal with the Facecam Pro. Elgato did something that no other webcam makers have done, and they've changed 2 specific things that have made this webcam better than the current best webcam. And I'm not talking like, if you look at them side by side, you'll kind of be able to notice that one is better than. This is a totally different game. Like this is the first webcam that I feel comfortable telling people you can make high quality YouTube videos with this. But I do need to mention something first. And it's not the mustache. You probably saw me in the marketing material for that webcam. It is very important to me that I point out that that is a completely separate contract than something like this video. Or to be more accurate, this video is not in that contract. In fact, this video is sponsored by VBI, not Elgato. Elgato doesn't get to see this video. They have no say in this video. Every opinion in this video is 100% mine. What Elgato told me is they just thought I looked pretty and they wanted to put my face in the marketing material. I didn't even have my mustache yet, so they jumped the gun a little bit. But while we're talking about today's sponsor, let me tell you about it. And by the way, did you know that using the Stream Deck can be even easier if you import an entire profile using the Stream Deck app? These profiles have ready-to-use icons and hotkey actions for your most used apps, things like Photoshop and Zoom, or even get the layout. I can mess around with hotkeys. I can even replace or remove ones that I don't want. And then, of course, if you want to further customize your Stream Deck's appearance, VBI has the largest collection of icons available on the entire internet, other than Elgato themselves. So if you want your Stream Deck to look like a retro 80s arcade or Animal Crossing, or maybe match your Call of Duty setup, use the link in the description below. Go pick some up. Make your Stream Deck look even better. Back to the video. But now let's jump into what makes this webcam better. I mentioned there were two things. Let's start with thing one of two. This is the first 4K 60 webcam that you can buy. Let me just share with you how bonkers that is. This is a $550 mirrorless camera. It shoots 4K 24, not even 4K 30. This is an $1,800 full frame mirrorless Sony camera. By the way, just the body, lens not included. This is $1,800, shoots 4K 30 tops. 4K 60 on a $300 webcam is ridiculous. When Elgato told me they were sending me a 4K 60 webcam, I thought that it was going to be like their 4K 60 USB capture card, and it was going to have a massive delay, and it would be basically unusable. I mean, don't get me wrong, this thing's not terrible. It's just, it's really niche. Check this out. This is 4K 60. That is phenomenal. Elgato, can you update the firmware in this thing to do that? Because I'll use this if you do. But Harris, I hear you all typing in the comments, Twitch only allows you to stream in 1080 60. So what's the point? That is a valid question. Let's talk about that. First off, let's talk about the 4K. Why do we need the 4K? Elgato made this webcam with a pretty wide angle, which I love. I love wide angle shots that give you so much more context than just, there's a reason vloggers use wide angle lenses. But sometimes you want a close up of your face. Maybe it's for a meme. Maybe it's for a reaction. Maybe you just don't want the wide angle shot and you want a close up shot only using your face. You have 4K. That's 8 million pixels to choose from. Zoom in. With 4K, you can zoom into 200% and still have a full HD resolution picture. And this is a real use case thing. This is exactly why we shoot our videos, the ones on this channel, we shoot them in 8K, even though we only upload in 4K. Because it lets us do these zoom ins that you've been seeing throughout this whole video. We can do that and still have full resolution. On Twitch, you can zoom in to 200% and still have the full resolution that Twitch can handle. And while there are a handful of 4K webcams out there, they make you choose between 4K 30 or 1080 60. You have to choose. Do you want the high resolution or do you want the high frame rate? No compromises anymore. With this webcam, you get both. Love it, Elgato. But if you know anything about cameras and resolution, you know that 4K doesn't necessarily mean a good image. Like I've seen plenty of 4K webcams that have terrible color, zero dynamic range, you know, like where the dark sides are just completely crushed to black and the light sides are totally blown out. The main reason this happens on webcams is because they use a cheap, tiny sensor. And if you don't know what a sensor is, the sensor is essentially the part that the light lands on after going through the lens. Like it's essentially like the digital film. It's the part of the camera that actually captures the image. So let me show you this. If this is the size of a typical webcam sensor, then this is the size of the Elgato Facecam sensor. And this is the size of the Sony Starvis sensor that the Elgato Facecam Pro uses. It's massive. And for those new to cameras, a large sensor is so important that it's basically the way professional cameras are categorized. Like, let me show you. This is a consumer camera, and it's got a crop sensor or an APS-C sensor. This is a professional camera. Hold on a sec. Only two hands here. and it has a full frame sensor. Got to make sure you can see those. There you go. See the difference there? $550 camera, $3,800 camera. You gotta get that to reflect the light off there. If you were to look up mirrorless camera on Amazon, look at the full frame ones and look at the names of them. You'll notice that right after the name of the camera, the first thing they say is full frame, because that's how important it is. Large sensor can make all the difference. Large sensors have a larger surface area, so they capture more light, meaning they work better in low light. It also has more dynamic range, so the dark areas and the light areas have more detail and color in them, and it makes it easier to get background blur. So the two big changes, we have the 4K 60 and we have the massive sensor. And these two things equate to one most important thing: a webcam with such a high quality image that I can justifiably say, yeah, you can use it to make YouTube videos. That's why I've been shooting this video in a number of areas around the studio, just to show you what it looks like in different situations, to show you that it's versatile. And the first shot had an open window behind me, and you could actually see what was outside the window, which is ridiculous for a webcam. I've also shot in a dark room. I've shot with some RGB behind me so you can see what some colors look like. I've also been doing these zoom ins throughout the whole video just because it's 4K and I can, and I want you to see that zoom ins don't ruin the resolution. But now that we've established the quality, let's go over some of the features, because we have to. You gotta. First of all, this camera is PTZ, and PTZ stands for point tilt zoom, meaning you can control where the camera is aiming, left, right, up, down, and zoom in amount. It's all digital on this camera, which is possible because of the high resolution. But if you go into the Camera Hub software, you can actually see at the top, you get to choose where the camera is actually facing within the super wide field of view. You can actually save 4 different presets and then jump between those presets in the software, or assign them to buttons on your Stream Deck and just swap between zooms with a push of the button. This camera also has autofocus, which is, it's fine. It's like webcam autofocus, where if you leave it on auto, it'll do the focus on. In fact, let me do it for you. I'll explain it with autofocus on so you can see some of the focus breathing or focus searching. I wouldn't leave the autofocus on. It's not going to give you a great autofocus experience like something like this might. But what it does allow you to do is have different focal distances set. What I would do is I would set it to auto so it can find your distance, and then turn it to manual, so then it's stuck there at the perfect focus depending on how far away you are from the camera. That way, if you're close to the camera like this, like I'm an arm's length, or you're dancing 5 feet back, you can be in focus no matter what. You can even set the different focus distances with a push of the button in the Stream Deck app. So that way, if you do both, it's really easy to switch back and forth. Really cool. Also important to know, there's no mic on this camera, which I've been begging webcam makers to take the microphone out of it. I've never seen, not once, seen a content creator use a webcam microphone. Take that out and shave that cost off of it, or put the money that you would have spent on a mic and spend it on something to make the webcam better, which is obviously what Elgato did here, which is great. This webcam is the first time I felt like there is a true medium between $150 premium webcam and a $550 mirrorless camera. Before, it's a massive price jump and there's nothing in between. Now I feel like there's a solid middle area. If you want a solid 4K image with great colors, good dynamic range, but you don't want to jump into specialty lenses and considerably higher prices, I think there's finally a solid middle ground. And by the way, this was the webcam from that previous video where I did the giant comparison of webcams where I'm like, oh, then another one gets sent to me. This is the one I was talking about. So if you want to see that video, go ahead and click right over here. And as always, happy streaming.
When you hit space, ready to unleash a firestorm, the signal that travels from your keyboard across the continent to reach the game's server takes less than 30 milliseconds. That's fast, but congested nodes, poor routing, and lost packets can slow your signal.
Huh. Okay. Huh. I don't know what to do then.
This month we're at that awkward spot where at the tail end of a previous generation, a new generation is out, but it's only the expensive high-end cards. The last generation, some supply at certain price points are drying up, but there's still some deals out there to be had, and in general, we can make some sense out of this confusing GPU market. So what I'm going to do is mostly focus on buying new in this video. However, I will mention that, you can find some better deals on the used market, and also one of the best things about when prices go a bit high is that you can often then sell your old hardware for good prices. And actually, I'll tell you really quickly about today's sponsor, and I actually think you could be very interested about this, could actually help you out. Okay, so Jawa.gg is a place where you can sell your computer hardware. So if you're buying a new GPU, you probably got an old one that you want to offload. Now at Jawa.gg, you can list your card for sale your market, but let's go ahead and look at a place where I'm not sponsored, which is PC Part Picker. Now, why am I using them? It's a convenient place to display current market prices of new graphics cards. It surveys a whole bunch of major retailers. Now, it's not always perfectly up to date. It's not going to find you the best deal that instantly sells out somewhere, that kind of a thing. But it does search a wide variety of major retailers: Newegg, Amazon, B&H Photo, Walmart, a whole bunch of stuff. So you can see the general prices and sort them low to high, so we can get a fair comparison of what things actually cost right now. Now, the new generation of graphics cards from AMD and NVIDIA hasn't had the low end yet. So most people buy graphics cards in the sub $500 market, and so for them, I think we should start by looking at, okay, what's the lowest price stuff on the most recent generation, which for NVIDIA is the RTX 3050, because we don't have a 4000 series card there yet. Now, the prices on these have thankfully started to come down. You can find them for around $270 at the cheapest now. However, I don't think they've come down enough. These were up around the $300 or more mark until pretty recently. But at this price point, I think you should really consider the AMD alternative, which is the RX 6600, which you can find as low as $230 right now. So it costs less, but it's also faster. Now, some people are like, okay, but NVIDIA has better ray tracing. Now, let's get this straight. There are reasons why you would consider buying an NVIDIA GPU over an AMD GPU. One of them is ray tracing performance, but only if you're buying at a high enough end graphics card tier where you would actually enable ray tracing. Because on an RTX 3050, your overall performance in games is going to be low enough that instead of, enabling everything to ultra and then turning on ray tracing, instead you'd be likely to turn down the settings and not enable ray tracing to get to frame rates that you'd like to play at. So I think that would be most people's use case on that, in which case the ray tracing is not really a feature. Also, these GPUs would mostly be used at lower resolutions like 1080p, which are still way more popular than the higher resolutions. And at these resolutions, I don't think image upscaling looks quite as good. So DLSS versus FSR2, and FSR2 is catching up to DLSS2 in terms of image quality. And the NVIDIA's 3000 series does not support DLSS 3 frame generation, so that's not something to consider. On this generation of graphics cards, if you're going to be live streaming or something like that, at low bit rates, the video encoders do look a little better on the NVIDIA GPUs, and then certain productivity apps are programmed to run better on NVIDIA. So there are reasons to choose it, but for somebody who's just playing games, the RX 6600 is faster for less money. And so I think it's the better deal for this market segment. And honestly, I think this is where most people are buying or would like to buy, is in this like $200 to $300 price point. Now, I will mention that if you're willing to spend a bit more, the RX 6600 also has an XT version, which is almost 20% faster. These are coming in, it looks like the lowest one's at $280 right now, but then there's also a 6650 XT version. Yeah, and sometimes these are actually cheaper. This is basically the updated 6600 XT. It has slightly faster memory. It's just a few percent difference. I don't have a 6650 to show direct comparisons for you, but I do have, the 6600 XT, which is just 1 or 2%, or maybe 5% slower in worst case scenarios. But the point is that these are actually coming in around the same price or cheaper than an RTX 3050 as well. And at this point, it's just crushing the 3050. It's not really even that close. Looks like we see one as low as $260 if you count a $20 mail-in rebate, so it'd be $280 without it. So at a similar price point, at performance tiers where ray tracing is not going to be a big deal anyway, I think these AMD 6600 class GPUs are by far the way to go, and this is where a lot of people are buying. Now, if we do step up to the next tier of GPUs, there's still no 4060 generation, but we do have an RTX 3060, and these are priced around $350 for and goes up significantly from there on the cheapest models. Now, the 3060 is significantly faster than a 3050, so this is a big step up. However, that also means the price has stepped up, so what does AMD offer as an alternative here? Well, we can usually get a 6700 XT for about the same price. And 6700 XTs looks like they're coming in at $360 to $370 for the cheapest ones. And the 6700 XT, again, is offering, when you're not ray tracing, significantly faster performance than the 3060 at about the same price. They have the same amount of VRAM. They're both 12 gigabytes. So again, if you need NVIDIA for work, some kind of productivity app, like I said, live streaming encoder looks a little better at low bit rates on this generation of hardware. That type of thing. Now, how about ray tracing? The 3060 is strong enough that you might use a little bit of ray tracing, but honestly, guys, it's aging a bit. We're moving on to where over the next few years, if you're going to use this GPU, right, I think that games will be demanding enough that you're more likely to be turning down settings rather than turning up settings like ray tracing. So once again, I wouldn't weigh it too heavily here. And depending on the ray tracing workload, the 6700 XT isn't always super far behind the 3060 because it's honestly just a faster GPU. So even if it loses a bigger chunk at ray tracing, you know, it can lose to the 3060, don't get me wrong, but maybe not by as much as you might think. It's not like the 6700 XT cannot turn on any ray tracing. Anyway, what if we go past this point? The next step up for NVIDIA would be the RTX 3060.
If you're a homeowner in Oregon and you're still paying for electricity, and I've got some big news.
60 Ti, and these have started to be available at MSRP a little bit more regularly, which is $400. And as far as the whole 3000 series of GPUs from NVIDIA goes, the 3060 Ti had one of the best value MSRPs. Now, the fact that this generation is at its tail end and these will be replaced sometime in the next year, probably, there's no official announcement from NVIDIA, you know, that makes just buying it at MSRP a little bit less attractive. But still, at $400, I think this is where NVIDIA finally is a bit more competitive. So 3060 Ti at about $400. What can you get from AMD? Well, like I said, the 6700 XT from AMD comes in at less, right? So, and gives you similar rasterized performance, often a few percent faster. So for a bit less money, $40 less, you could get the same or slightly better rasterized performance. But in ray tracing performance, a 3060 Ti, again, especially if you're thinking 1080p, the 3060 Ti might be usable for ray tracing, in which case that might weigh your selection a little bit. It's still not going to be super strong for ray tracing, though. For AMD, if you go up to the 6750 XT, that's where you can find them at $400, and that's your direct competitor. I don't have one to show you side-by-sides, but it is a few percent faster than the 6700 XT, so it would slightly increase its rasterized performance lead over the 3060 Ti. The main difference here is that the 6700 XT class would be getting you 12 gigabytes of VRAM, I can speak, whereas the 3060 Ti is only getting you 8. However, I think at the resolutions and graphics settings you would be using this graphics card at, the 8 gigabytes is probably not actually going to be causing you any serious problems. And so here's where I would actually give a split recommendation. I think the 3060 Ti, for people who want NVIDIA features, want the productivity app support, you know, they have the better driver reputation, live streaming encoder on this generation, that kind of a thing. I think the 3060 Ti is the first place where I think NVIDIA could make good sense on this list. Now, if you're stepping up from here, you go up to the RTX 3070. Now, the MSRP on these is $500, and you can now sometimes find them for that price. It looks like we have one available at Walmart right now for $500, but they're still pretty hard to find at that price. A lot of times they're still a bit higher. So if you can find it at $500, you might consider it. It's still only 8 gigabytes of VRAM. And the problem is the 3060 Ti actually gets pretty close to that performance for $100 less, which at this price point is a huge percentage difference. So the 3060 Ti is probably better value if you're buying NVIDIA. And then if you're going up to the $500 price point, the problem is that AMD now has the RX 6800 non-XT. Looks like I can find some in stock right now for $590, $504, and then they jump up quite a bit from there. So the supply on these is dwindling, but it's still there in the $500 price point. And so for basically the same price as the cheapest 3070, you get double the VRAM at 16 gigabytes, and it's just significantly faster at rasterized performance. Again, ray tracing, and on the 3070, especially if you're playing at 1080p and looking more like a high refresh rate build, the 3070 ray tracing can make sense. At 1440p, I think it's a bit less compelling. You'd often be having to upscale with DLSS more aggressively if you want to get the ray tracing enabled, but it's certainly usable in some games depending on how sensitive you are to the upscaling, image quality, things like that. But I've got to say, if it was me at this price point, if I didn't need NVIDIA for productivity, I think grabbing the 16 gigabytes of VRAM and faster rasterized performance on the 6800 is the better buy. So that's where I'd come down on it, but you could consider the 3070 if you can get it at the $500 price point. And now we reach the portion of the video where I really think the best deals are gone. You used to be able to get 6800 XTs brand new for about $550, fairly consistently. Now they're still showing up occasionally. I've seen them at Micro Center. They do come in stock every now and then on Amazon or Newegg, but they usually sell out within an hour of posting at that $550 price point, whereas they used to sit there for several days. The RTX 3070 Ti would be the next step up from NVIDIA, but I'm not seeing anything available new for less than $700 right now, and just do not pay that for this. It's absolutely not worth it. The next step up, so from there for NVIDIA would be 3080s, which again, the new supply on those at good prices, you used to be able to get them in the $700 to $800 price point new. Now they're up around $900 new. So the good deals on those, I think, have kind of dried up as well. So difficult part of the video, right? What do we do? Well, one thing is, this is the point where if you want to go past, I think, the 3070 or the 6800 at that $500 price point, if you want to go past that, I think you should seriously consider looking at the used market to see what's available. And then you might catch a quick deal that's available on a 6800 XT. Those do still pop up. But beyond that, guys, I hate to say it, but the 3070 Ti, not 3070 Ti, my bad, 40.
At Elite Gamer, we can't stand lag. We made it our mission to get you gaming
3070 Ti, which has been widely criticized for having an $800 MSRP. If you're buying new right now at the prices I'm seeing, and you want to spend more than $500, you know, this is faster than a 3080, and it on the new market right now seems to be in stock at lower prices. So it does make more sense if you're buying new. Now we can look one more chance here for AMD. They do have their 6900s. Those look to be a little overpriced right now. They have their 6950s. Sometimes good deals still pop up on these. Okay, we've got a 6950 from AMD at $700. So I'd say at the $700 price point, as far as what I'm seeing new, there's really nothing to compete with the 6950 XT, okay, from AMD. So I'll give that my $700 recommendation. And this would be very fast at rasterized performance, somewhat usable ray tracing, but you wouldn't really want to buy it for that purpose. If you're more interested in ray tracing, this is where I think, okay, if we step up to the 4070 Ti at this $800 price point, they actually are in stock at their MSRP, right around $800. I did actually click those links to be sure that, yeah, they really are available. Here's $800 4070 Ti on Newegg, sold and shipped by Newegg for $800. It's right there. Anyway, like I said, it got a lot of bad publicity for this price point, but it is, as far as what's available new right now, I think the best price to performance at $800. It's faster than the 3080s, which are actually costing more new right now. So unless you're willing to buy used, that's what I'm going to say. If you want a better deal right now, you can look at the used market. But at this price point, I think the 4070 Ti is the best deal. Also, you're getting, you know, the new generation of GPUs. We could talk about that. From all brands, you're starting to get the, you know, AV1 encoding, which should be even better encoders. You're getting more energy efficiency. You still get all the other DLSS and ray tracing and all that, but NVIDIA's 4000 series also now adds in DLSS 3 frame generation, which can help the motion fluidity, not the performance, not the input latency, but it can help the motion fluidity in certain games that support it. Watch my whole video on that. It's pretty interesting. I still think $800 will have to come down. The fact that they're sitting in stock this close to launch at this price and they don't seem to be anywhere near selling out means I feel like these prices will come down eventually. But there you go. That's where it's at right now. Now, AMD has the 7900 series out. Their 7900 XT is MSRP'd at $900. We're starting to see a few models come available for like $20 less than that. But I feel like this is very overpriced. It's $100 more than the 4070 Ti. It is a faster in rasterized performance, but the 4070 Ti is getting fast enough that you might seriously consider using ray tracing, especially if you're playing at 1440p, in which case that's a bigger selling factor. It also, like we said, has DLSS 3 frame generation, which I think is pretty useful in single-player games that support it. Watch my full video on that. So I really think the 7900 XT is not a great buy. The XTX model should MSRP at $1,000, but it's sold out at that price and is actually available for over $1,200. And so if we're up at the $1,200 price point, the RTX 4080, which, don't get me wrong, I think is significantly overpriced, and it's sitting in stock at around that $1,200 price point. So I think its price will have to come down to move more units. That being said, if you are buying right now, the 4080 is a better choice than the 7900 XTX if they're actually both available at $1,200. They're basically tied in rasterized performance, with the 7900 XTX having a few percent lead on average, but nothing to write home about as anything major. You wouldn't really notice. Whereas the 4080 is more power efficient and has better, much better ray tracing performance. And like I said, NVIDIA productivity app, all of that. And now for live streaming encoders, I think once AV1 gets supported by places like Twitch, I think that's going to be less of a difference. But for now, at least, you might consider that as well. So I'm not telling you the 4080 is a good deal at $1,200. I'm telling you that if you're buying new right now at $1,200, it's the best thing available at that price. It beats all of any 3090 or 3090 Ti you see at this price point, any of that. So there you go. Now, if you want to go past this point, you buy yourself a 4090. The 4090 is significantly better than anything else on the market, as long as you have the space in your case and a power supply that can support it. But it also costs $2,000. So if you wanted to spend $2,000 on a graphics card just to get the best of the best, there you go. I'm not going to tell you it's a good deal, but it is the best GPU. I think the only people it really would make any sense for is, first of all, like I said, you have basically an unlimited budget, but also if you're trying to game at 4K, especially if you're trying to go past 60 hertz, if you want to get higher refresh rate 4K gaming, the 4090 is the best choice for that if you can fit it into your budget, which I'm not going to tell you is a good deal, but at this price point, we're not really looking at value. I hope this video was interesting for you. Again, just a reminder to, if you want to offset the cost of these expensive new GPUs, try selling your old PC parts. You can sell your GPU on Jawa.gg. Oh, and
Rise at 9. $4.2. $57. Third generation. No, go and lay down. Why is it 850? Oh, 16 core 32. Tomahawk. That's the one they had there. 169. Huh. What the difference is. I wonder. $7,000 fucking dollars. Holy fuck. That's fucking ridiculous. Ryzen 9. Huh. Core. $497. Core. $9, $12, $24, $8, $16. $7,000 fucking dollars. That's fucking ridiculous. Core. 6 core. 8 core. 8 core. Core 8 thread. 9 core. $500. What? Oh, core 24, 375. Huh. Second generation. Holy shit. That's way down there. No wonder it's so cheap. Hmm. Black edition. No. 64 core. Was that 5,000, 7,000? fucking ridiculous. T4. Oh. 40. 1224. 1632. 589. Huh. Eight 16. 1224. 118. Well, yeah, I don't know. Well, I think I'm gonna. Ten 70 ain't very good. Seven. over $1,000, huh? In Mexico?
Here are 3 reasons why you should buy a new gaming PC from Build Redux. 1, we offer the best pricing on quality gaming PCs. 2, our team will build and optimize your gaming PC for maximum FPS.
$1,000 is what 45% of you wanted me to spend on this gaming and streaming PC. And I am extremely excited for this build, so you can finally build a good gaming and streaming PC for $1,000. Oh, and also, this is a pretty budget-friendly case and it looks amazing. I bought a tiny electric screwdriver. I really wonder if this is gonna help me with the build. It was less than $20. I will link it in the description in case you're interested. So I'm gonna show you how to install all of this stuff in the PC. I will give you some cheaper and more expensive alternatives. Then I'm gonna show you how to set up the PC and remove the Windows 10 watermark for very cheap with yoursiddiqui.com. And finally, we will test the PC in some games. Now, I found a motherboard that will look absolutely amazing in this build. However, it doesn't look as amazing as the main sponsor of today's video, which is Owned. Owned.tv offers beautiful animated overlays that will make your stream look better in no time. Whether you want a Christmas theme for the coming holidays, an officially licensed Call of Duty Warzone theme, or any other style, or click the link on top of my description and use my code TVN at checkout for 50% of the price. Now, I've been looking around for a lot of different motherboards on Amazon, and in the end, a lot of the times it comes down to finding the best current deal. This is especially true for the graphics card. I'm gonna go into that later. But the reason I'm so excited about this motherboard is that there's not any part of it that doesn't look good. It is pretty much completely black, and the specific reason that I chose for this kind of look is that with a budget build like this, not that $1,000 is a low budget for a PC, $1,000 is not enough to start adding RGB fans and RGB strips. We don't have a budget to spend on that. So since this case is white around the edges and then completely dark on the inside, besides from this white strip, all these PC parts being black, including the complete motherboard being black, will make this build look very high-end and very clean. The motherboard also has a very clean heatsink for the SSD that we're gonna install. Ah, this is amazing. And the SSD I went for is a
Links to all parts, where? Okay, here we go. $146, holy shit. How do you... Only 26, only 3 years old. How do you... 108. This is what? 146. It ain't that big a difference. Ah. Okay. CPU. $612. Doesn't say how much it is. Oh. Currently unavailable. GPU 36, 12 gig. Holy shit. How much is, it doesn't say how much that is either. Huh. $400. Huh. $149. $86. Wow. Huh. How can I? Huh. $1660 Super. Huh. Huh. just GPUs. Now,